Hey everyone, we're here with Michael from Necronomicon Ex Mortis. Fantastic fucking band out of Chicago. If you don't know them, you should absolutely check them out. Michael, thanks for joining me, dude. I greatly appreciate it.
Of course, dude. Thank you for having me. This is gonna be a good time.
Hell yeah. I'm gonna tell you, dude, the new EP, The Mother of Death, so for everyone out there, it came out November 29th. It is fucking stellar from start to finish. Like, holy shit, there's not a boring moment on it at all. I fucking love it.
Oh, thank you, dude. It's it's a cliche to say this, but it's my favorite too. I think it's the best one we've done so far because it's so tight and focused.
Yeah.
There's a good amount of variety while still maintaining the overall, hey, it's melodic death metal. You know what you're getting, but you're getting it with a twist this time.
Yeah. Yeah, like listening to the earlier stuff, and not that you guys have like 20 years, as a band. You're what, like 2.5-ish years old.
Two and a half ish, yeah, somewhere around
Yeah.
there.
Um, even the earlier stuff, like to now, you guys have really grown. It sounds like together, like the vocals are a little more out there and um more pronounced now versus, the earlier stuff, which, even the early stuff is fucking good shit, dude. So
Well, thank you, man. That first EP, a lot went wrong on that first EP. And I'm very happy that it turned out as well as it did because we had to push the studio date back a few times. I was really sick when we were going to go do it, so it got pushed back a few months. And then I didn't have quite enough cash for enough days in the studio, so we were scrambling. And then the vocalist Craig, he had been out of the death metal world for a little while. So it was taking him a while to like kind of retrain himself to getting back to that very harsh bark he has in his voice. And so there were a couple times there where we were recording or trying to figure out how the vocals would fit in the songs, and he was pushing so hard that he coughed up blood,
oh
which
shit.
pretty metal, just in terms of the story itself, but not exactly healthy or sustainable for being a vocalist.
Yeah, not
Uh,
at all.
yeah, but I mean, it came out great, and I'm very proud of that first one. But it's significantly different back then as it is now.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a very as a band, it's a very pronounced like growth. A good, like, it's a great positive growth, like the musicianship on The Mother of Death is like as a whole is fucking fantastic, dude. Like, you guys are super tight and focused and driven is what it sounds like on there.
Oh, thank you, man. We don't have the luxury of being in the same room all the time, so we have to kind of plan things out months in advance, and that is a little bit of a drag. It's no secret that I kind of wish things were a little bit more like they were back in the heyday of death metal in the early 90s. But the upside to having several weeks or even several months between seeing each other is we can really plan things to get them exactly how we want them. And
Yeah.
that's, I think, kind of why the releases keep getting better is there's less throw songs together, get into the studio. It's not as much of a fly by night thing. It's more like, okay, well, we only have this amount of time in 4 months. How can we make the best of it?
Yeah, it's you really, in those scenarios, you really have to be like laser focused. There's not room to like, cool, we're gonna see each other, 2 times over the next 6 months. So here's the deal. We don't get to, hey, let's just get trashed and see what happens. You know what I mean? You've got to be really fucking really on par, but it comes across so well, on everything from Trick or Treat to, The Mother of Death to Salem's Lot. Like, just through it is so fucking awesome. And to end with Salem's Lot, uh, is that shout out to good old Stephen King. Like,
Yeah.
fuck yeah.
Stephen King was. my favorite author for many, many years. I've read most of his books. And Salem's Lot, even though it's probably one of the more obvious choices, it's either that or Pet Cemetery that are my favorites. Just because, again, they're the obvious choices, or at least some of the obvious choices, but they just creeped me out, man. Like I read those back to back in high school while I was failing math, and I just loved them
Yeah.
so much. And I don't intend to keep ending things with Stephen King songs, but that's just how it kind of worked out to be. And I hope sooner or later the band gets big enough where someone taps Steve on the shoulder, like, "Hey, this weird horror band from Chicago wrote a bunch of songs about your movies and books. So listen to this." You know, that would be that'd be pretty much a dream come true.
Hell yeah, he'd sit down with some lines of cocaine, listen to some fucking Necronomicon Ex Mortis, and like throw down, like, let's go.
Well, I think it was Stephen King that actually really helped the first Evil Dead movie gain traction. That's what our name is based off of. You know, Evil Dead's my favorite movie of all time.
Oh,
Uh,
right on.
well, and I say that, but I even can't really choose which one is my favorite. I mean, there's five now, and any of the first three just depends on the day. I absolutely love those movies. And the remake or reimagining or continuation, you know, whatever you want to think of it as, that one's great. I loved Evil Dead Rise. I'm just that whole series to me is as good as it gets.
Hell yeah. So I never really got into Evil Dead that much. I, of course, like it because who the fuck doesn't? Uh, but I never like, I was never a real big diehard, but like Stephen King for me, I fucking love Stephen King. Like all of his books were, so well written and they kept you on the edge of your seat the whole fucking time. And the one that stands out to me, which is not one, it's seven, is the Dark Tower series. Like that was so different from everything else that he wrote. And it was just like, holy shit.
You know, the thing is, it's funny you say that because the books I haven't read from him are the Dark Tower series. Not for a lack of interest, I just didn't get around to it because I went to college and didn't have time.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I want to sit down and get through it eventually. Um, but between the band and teaching and just writing tunes, honestly, I don't read as much as I should anymore, and I really want to get back to it because it's basically my favorite hobby, either that or horror movies. But I think at this point, horror movies, I can call a tax write off.
Well, yeah, I would say they probably edge out a little more because you probably have time or make time to sit down and, watch some horror movies. Whereas, with reading, like, and I'm just as guilty as everyone else. As much as I want to read more, I've got to find time in my day to like carve out like, okay, I'm gonna spend time reading, and usually that's in the morning with coffee.
You know, when you're practicing guitar, you can throw on a movie and just do a lot of repetitive exercises. And as
Yeah.
long as you're paying enough attention to hit the clicks, the meat inside doesn't really matter. So you can watch a movie, practice some Paul Gilbert stuff or whatever, and that's a perfectly decent Thursday night. You know what I mean? Reading is again, absolutely love it. Wish I had more time for it. It's considerable more brain power to do that.
Oh, for sure. You have to be, when you're reading, you have to be focused, or you end up reading the same paragraph like six times, going, "What did I just read?"
Yeah, the comprehension just goes out the window.
Yeah, yeah. I'm absolutely guilty of that. Like I'll read a whole page and be like, "I don't even know what I just read." Like start over again.
Oh, yeah, or the worst is like you're just going on autopilot and you get half a chapter into something and you go, wait a second, I have no idea what's going on. I have no idea who these people are. Great, now I got to backtrack.
Yeah, it's so funny. So, what was the catalyst for the band like coming together?
Originally, 2.5 years ago, um, well, I was in a band, a different death metal band called Blood Feast Ritual. And unfortunately, things just went south. Um, we were having some issues with a stable lineup. The other guitar player and I, he's a great guy, really good guitar player, but we didn't quite see eye to eye on some of the business things on how to actually release it. And honestly, I moved out of California. I mean, it was the middle of the pandemic when all this went south. I was bleeding money because I went from teaching many students a week in person to a few over Zoom. And I wanted to move back to Chicago because this is where my family has been for many years. So my wife and I packed up, came to Chicago, and amid all the chaos of Blood Feast Ritual, it's really hard when you don't see each other that often. And you're already having problems, it becomes easier to just stop thinking about it. And that's kind of what happened. So I was left with many, many songs and no outlet for them. And this is a little unfortunate, but I thought, okay, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to do another band, I've got to do it so I am the main guy making decisions. Because as much as we like to think democracy works in a band, and it does in some, oftentimes you need one guy just relentlessly pushing forward. So I called up all my friends from Berkeley. Manuel, one of my absolute best friends, the other guitar player. We were in a history of guitar styles class together. Joey, the drummer, and Craig, the vocalist, were both in a class where we had to focus on lowering body tension for musicians while playing. And I met the bass player Yusuf through a mutual friend that was my roommate for a while. So, we're all Berkeley dudes that just had a really good time hanging out. And I called them to play some death metal. And most of the guys didn't even really play that much death metal. I kind of had to twist their arms into doing it. But I mean, now we get to see each other and hang out more. So, yeah, it's not all bad, right?
No, not at all. Like, especially when you make those relationships to be able to turn it into, something else is, it's fantastic for you. It was, obviously a pretty kick-ass band, for other people, it's, just translating that into a business of some sort so they can progress together.
It's cool because we are able to successfully separate the business side of things from just being really good friends too.
That's
Because
nice.
we'll still just hang out and drink a little too much and act like idiots. We still do that pretty regularly, actually, at least as often as we can, being that we don't all live in the same city. So I think because we're able to maintain that balance, that translates in the music. I really believe that. I also believe that going out to California comes through in the music because we do all our recording, or at least the vast majority of it, at Ultimate Studios in Panorama City with Charlie Waymeyer, who's another really good bud of mine. Uh, Going to California to record these songs is a huge pain in the neck. Like it
Yeah.
totally sucks because you got to deal with the airline. It's really expensive. You're taking time off work. You're taking time away from your family. It's it's wonderful when you're actually in the moment doing it, but getting there from point A to B, horrible. Everything goes wrong always. And that's, in a weird way, that's a good thing because that hilarious amount of frustration really does show up in the music. It's like, all right, we have 8 days. We need to record 14 songs. Go.
Right.
Just go. And somehow our schedules keep getting crazier, but we keep managing to pull it off. But yeah, the emotions you have with the people you're with come out in the music, and the stress you're under when you're playing comes out in the music, and all of that. It's like seasoning to your turkey or your chicken, or I don't know. Can you tell I don't cook? But
Right.
it comes through, and I think that's what makes the music, especially metal music, so relatable.
Yeah. Well, and you're right. I think oftentimes when people are getting ready to do something like record or go on tour, it's like the whole time leading up, it's almost like a comedy of errors. You're like whatever can go wrong will go wrong. Like airline, lose your guitar, or they break something, and then you get there and you're like, what the fuck? And then you look back and you're like, oh, like it it's just something that happens, right? And you
Oh,
gotta
it,
laugh
it
at it.
it sucks in the moment, but at the end of the day, you'll hopefully be fine, and you're going to get some songs recorded. But yeah,
Yeah,
it does turn into an absolute mess very quickly, and an expensive mess, especially if you're going through
yeah,
LAX.
that's the truth. God, LAX is like pain in the pain in the neck.
Oh man, I have to fly into LAX in 6 weeks because I've got some time in the studio, and then I'm going to NAM, and I am so excited for all of it, except dealing with LAX, going to and coming out of LA. It's always something at that place. It's always an upcharge or lost luggage or gate changes that they conveniently forget to mention. It's not a
What
fan.
about what about Ontario? That place is a lot smaller. Seems to be a lot. Every time I fly in, I try to fly into Ontario just because it's super easy to navigate and I don't have near the issues.
Never been there, but John Wayne's good. John Wayne down in Santa Ana is
Okay.
like notably less of a pain in the neck. And they don't give me, and this is actually why I prefer to fly in there, rent a car, and then just drive an hour north to LA. They don't give me crap about the giant case full of guitars. LAX, they have a problem with it consistently. But John Wayne, I go there and they're like, hey man, what's that? It's about 6 grand worth of guitars. That's cool, dude. Go on right through.
Yes.
Yeah, oh, way less of a headache.
That's so crazy. Yeah, I can't even imagine like traveling with that many guitars. I mean, I think the most I ever traveled with is like one or two, probably two.
When we go to California, we normally bring, I want to say 3 or 4. Um, Manuel usually brings one of his. I bring one of mine, and we have an acoustic because we do actually all of our practicing on acoustics, so that way we know it's as clean as possible. So there's at least 3, sometimes more. I know this last time Manuel brought an 8 string because he has some solo EPs, instrumental, and it's mainly 7 and 8 string based music. So he brought an 8 string out just to film a quick video in the studio. It's the song Aphelion, which shameless plug, I played a guest solo on, and it's a cool song. I mean, Manuel's a great songwriter, and I have nothing but good things to say about him because we have enough in common to where there's a shared language when speaking about music, but there are enough differences to keep things interesting. He's
Yeah.
into being like a modern composer, as he calls it, with very odd harmony, odd scales, very different interpretation of time. And I just want to go back to the '80s and pretend I'm Paul Gilbert. So, you know, 2 completely different approaches. Because goddamn, like, dude, I'll put on Racer X or Mr. Big or Paul's solo albums, and it's like, man, this is as cool as guitar ever got. Paul Gilbert. I absolutely just adore that man. I got to meet him at NAMM a couple of years ago, which is cool. He gave me a guitar pick. Super nice dude.
You're like, fuck yeah.
Oh yeah, oh totally. And the crazy thing is, it was 0.5 millimeters. It was so thin. And I know he's been lightening up his pick over the years, but good Lord, it was like paper. I don't know if you can
Yeah.
see that on cam, but mine here is 1.5 millimeter and extremely sharp because it'll punish a string really well. Holding
Yeah.
his round and thin, I was like, oh my God, what is this?
Like, how do you how do you get a sound out of that?
I mean, he's the master for a reason. Like, truthfully, the dude is just I've got a lot of favorite guitar players. I think every guitar player has a lot of favorite guitar players because you love one guy for one thing and another guy for something totally different. But if you put
Yeah.
a gun in my head, I'd say my top 3. I can't even do a top 3. A top 5 would be like Michael Romeo from Symphony X, Paul Gilbert, Jeff Loomis, Christian Mosner, and Petrucci.
Okay.
And I already want to add like Ingve and Jeff from Annihilator and Chris Poland and, and Derek Taylor, but you know I could go on and on about all the nerdy guitar dudes I love because they're all shrapnel 80s guys or they all played glam metal, one of the two, or both.
And I think it's the same way with bands, right? Because people ask you who's your favorite, and it's sometimes you can fire off and go, oh, like in this moment, this band is the one I really prefer to listen to. But when you get to like top three and top five, like how do you really narrow that down? Because at the end of the day, they all have fantastic merits, whatever you choose. Obviously, you like them for certain reason, but it's really hard to narrow those down to just a few.
Yeah, I always say that my favorite band is Iron Maiden, and that is definitely true. And my second favorite band is whoever I'm listening to at the time. It's not exactly an accurate way to talk about it, but it gets me out of answering the question, I guess.
Yeah,
But
I mean
Maiden's my favorite band of all time, and if I had to pick a second right now, Obscura is up there, especially the albums with Chris, pretty much only the albums with Christian on them. Um, Dying Fetus, always. Suffocation, always. I'm going to see them tomorrow. I think it's tomorrow. I have tickets to see them soon. I really hope it's not tonight. Oh, that would
it's
suck.
tonight. You'd be
Anyway,
like,
yeah.
son of a bitch.
It's like, oh man. Um, that's never happened to me before, thankfully.
Oh, it has
Uh,
happened to me a fucking bunch. I'm like in an interview and all of a sudden I get a text and I'm trying not to like read it on camera, but it's like, hey dude, I thought you were coming to the show. And I'm like,
oops.
I gotta go. Shit. Yeah.
That'd be funny though. It's the tour, I think, with I Am Morbid as the headliner. I don't
Okay.
honestly know. Once I saw Suffocation was going to be there, I was like, good enough, buying the ticket.
That's funny. I think we've got like Jesus Lizard and Young Widows here today.
Oh, cool. I don't know much about either one, but honestly, I'm always down to go to a show, especially if it's metal. Even if it's something I'm not even really that into, it's just like, hey, there have been bands that I've straight up hated, then I saw them live and I go, oh, now I get it.
Yeah.
Or at least if I don't like it, I can develop more of an appreciation for it.
I like that a lot. Like, uh, I always give a band like a chance live because sometimes the music doesn't translate well on record. But there was a there's a band, I don't even remember I know their name. I'm not going to call it out, but I tried to listen to them on record and I'm like, I just don't get it. And then I saw them live and I was like, holy shit. Okay. Oh, Howling Giant. They're like, uh, they're, I don't know, doomy kind of, um, best. I don't even know what the best way to describe it is. I kind of doomy and jammy all kind of crushed in, but on record, I'm like, I listened to it three or four times. I'm like, I don't get it. And then I saw them live and I was like, I fucking get it, dude. And they are so good live.
It's kind of crazy how stuff like that works out because for the longest time, I didn't get Mastodon. I was like, I just do not understand the appeal of this band. It's not like I hated them or anything, but I just didn't get it. And then one day, after I got into Candlemass, someone put on Mastodon, and I go, oh, now I see it. And now I actually really like Mastodon, but it took kind of getting into older Doom to
Yeah,
appreciate that slightly sludgy kind of sound. I mean, because I was used to, metal being a dying fetus, or
right.
internal bleeding or cryptopsy, and then I hear something that's sludgy and like tuned to Z on a Les Paul, and I'm like, this is weird. What do you mean this is metal? I get in Candlemass, which, absolutely amazing band. And then the Doom thing starts to make sense to me. It's like, oh, now I get it. It's just, I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
My palate was not advanced enough to understand Doom. I'm actually a really big Doom fan now. It's one of those genres I want to know more about because I've been such a death metal nerd and thrash metal nerd and power metal nerd for most of my life at this point that getting into Doom in the last couple of years has been really cool.
Yeah, it's really I mean, in my world, it's coming a lot more to the forefront now. Like there's so many really good like Doom style bands, and even like you look at, they're like, oh, this band is Doom, and all these there's a lot of bands that say they're Doom, and in my mind, like it's what I've always thought is just good rock and roll. You know what I mean? I listened
Totally.
to I was talking to one guy and he said, I look at Doom as just you get some really good rock and roll and slow it down. Oh,
Yeah, yeah, I can see that.
yeah, that makes complete sense. So like what Doom bands have you been getting into like recently?
So it also kind of started with Candlemass for me. I saw this video on a really hilarious YouTube channel called the guy's name is Go Nilok, and he makes satirical videos about metal. And he had one entirely on Doom. I think it's 20 minutes long on the history of Doom metal, and he's throwing in a lot of jokes, but legitimately, he also throws in a whole lot of cool suggestions. And he said, we can talk about Black Sabbath, then we can talk about Candlemass. I'm like, all right, cool. So Candlemass, I started there, loved it. Then I got into some stoner metal stuff. Electric Wizard was cool.
Yeah.
Um, their albums, I've noticed, sonically are all very different, just in terms of production and things like that, which was awesome. Because the first one I heard was not Wizard Bloody Wizard, the one with Dunwich on it. I don't remember the name of the album off the top of my head. Witch Call Today, I think. I think. Don't, I hope the internet doesn't shoot me for that.
Don't shoot him.
Yeah, but I think it was that one. And then I listened to the first one, and they sound completely different. Like, oh, that's cool. Sleep, High on Fire. I got to see High on Fire open for Meshuggah once. That was a lot of fun. Um, oh,
I know. I threw you in the spot and you're like, "Oh shit."
no, Saint Vitus. That was the one that I got into.
Oh,
I was like, these records don't sound good, but the songs are amazing.
yeah.
The Sword, also big fan. They were probably the only Doom band I listened to before Candlemass, actually, but I didn't really know they were a Doom band. I just saw them open for Opeth and liked
Hmm.
it a lot, got into the band. Then I saw them front row um, at the Middle East in Cambridge, Massachusetts. It was front row, right under the guitar player and singer, and I was so sick I could barely stand. But I was not going to miss that show, and I'm fairly certain I sneezed all over his set list. But it was a really good time. I went with my buddy Jeremy, and then the next day we went to go see Between the Buried and Me, Intronaut, uh, and Deaf Heaven for the first time,
Hmm.
which I had never heard of any of those bands except for Between the Buried and Me. So that was an education, all right.
Yeah, what very different like styles from one night to the next too.
Oh, dude, I love doing that. I've done this twice in my life. Night one, dying fetus. Then the next day, immediately suffocation. That has happened twice where I've seen them in the same week. Awesome.
Hell
Just
yeah.
friggin' cool. The last time I saw Dying Fetus, unfortunately, they were in Chicago back in, I want to say November 10th, but I was in New Jersey at the time because on the 9th I went to go see Maiden for literally the 13th time. And yeah, they were playing with Black Dahlia, I remember, which would have been so cool. But the last time I saw them, they were playing with a bunch of deathcore bands that I didn't know. Um, I don't want to say Frozen Soul and Undeath, which I really like Undeath and I really like Frozen Soul, especially because Frozen Soul kind of does that bolt thrower thing. And I've got a
Dude,
bolt
they're
thrower album in my car that I never take out. So
Frozen Soul are so fucking good. Like every time I see them, they're just like they're on it. Always a great time.
cool, man. I mean, so I've got Crypt of Ice, um, and that record sounds disgusting, and I mean that as a compliment. It is
Really.
just gross. It's that album's really cool. The new Undeath is sick. Um, I actually I was in Princeton, New Jersey, and I went to the Princeton Record Exchange, and I dropped an irresponsible amount of money on new CDs. where I got a whole bunch of really good stuff. I got into 200 stab wounds, got the new Enforce, the new Oxygen Destroyer. I got this band called, of course, now I can't remember what they are, but they're one of those bands that keeps getting called Black Dahlia Murder sound alike, but they don't sound anything like the Black Dahlia Murder. I don't remember the name. I remember listening to it and being like, the songs are good, but the production is a bit modern
Lacking.
for me. Yeah, it's just metal's weird because I understand that they want to sound as brutal and in your face as possible, but there are some records that go so over the top that it doesn't sound like people anymore, and that's kind
Yeah.
of when I check out because it's just like, uh, okay, good example. Um, I bought two EPs one weekend. One was at the time the newest Carcass EP, and the other was I won't say the name. I'm not gonna bash them at all because I actually love the songs on the EP, but they're this very modern technical death metal band. I listened to that one first, and the songs were great, but the production was so clean that it was a lot like looking at a picture of D-Day, and the horror and the war and the carnage and oh my God. And then I listened to the Carcass EP, which like was slightly out of tune and slightly out of time, but like a real band. And that felt, much more like, oh God, I'm in the trenches kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're both amazing for different reasons. But I generally prefer when metal is going off the rails and has that human element in it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think when it's too clean and too calculated, it it's just I don't want to say boring, but you don't with me it doesn't connect real well. I want something that's raw that I can say, "Oh, like I caught like some albums you listen to and you're like, "Oh, he fucked up there. He wasn't supposed to hit that string." And you hear it. It's just a real quick, millisecond. You're like, "Ah, but he's not fucking perfect. Neither am I." Like, cool, we're good.
Yeah, it just it there's actually this guitar lesson Paul Gilbert was giving. I want to say it was on the Terrifying Guitar Trip from '92, but again, I could be wrong. But he was talking about that song, "To Be With You," the last song on "Lean Into It" by Mr. Big. And there's this quick little pentatonic lick that he plays, and he admit that when he recorded it, he was behind the beat. He wasn't quite fast enough to get it on that take. Then they did it again, and he was right on. And listened to him both back to back, and he went with the one where he was slightly late because it sounded more human, it sounded a little bit more musical. And then he said, "Now let this be a lesson to all those that go into a recording studio. Perfect does not necessarily mean better
Right.
because sometimes the take you want is a little messed up, but that's a moment in time that you're never going to truly replicate again. And that's a beautiful thing." And I very much, I think the insecure 20-year-old inside of me wants everything to be as perfect as possible, but the jaded 30-year-old is very happy to say, like, hey man, I play guitar the way I do, and if you like it, great. And if you don't, there's plenty of other guitar players out there, whatever.
Right. It's being confident in your own skill too, right?
Oh yeah. You get
Like
to
it or not.
I mean, you get to a point where it's just like, I play the way I want and I write the songs that I want, and I'm not trying to impress anybody or outdo anybody or compete in any way. I just want to be better than I was yesterday and make that like 15-year-old in me that was so into metal really happy. That's it. That's what you gotta do at the end of the day. Because if you get caught up in like the Instagram guitar competitions and all that, it starts to feel really self-defeating after a while.
Yeah, but I mean, the same could be said for anything when you're trying to compare yourself to anyone else.
Oh yeah.
Like it's I'm guilty, right? I think everyone's guilty of it to some extent, but you've got to exactly what you said. You have to like just be better than you were the day before,
Oh
right?
yeah, man. They say comparison's the thief of joy for a reason. You get caught up playing head games and like, well, am I 10% faster than this guy? And can I sweep cleaner than that guy? And after a while, it's just like, who cares? Did you write a song today? If the
Right.
answer is no, go write a song today.
Yeah.
I mean, well, it's not. It's not sports stats. You know what I mean? Like I'm not holding up a card saying like, okay, well, the play here could have passed the ball to Mr. Dickhead over there and whatever. Who cares? Just play your guitar, write your songs. Don't turn it into a competition because there's so much music out there, and it we're at an age where home recording has never been easier, and you
Right.
can make a pretty decent sounding record on a laptop. And a lot can be said for individual scenes or the internet making things an even playing field. Doesn't matter. It's here to stay. The tools we have are the tools that we have. So instead of comparing yourself to others or worrying about what everyone else is doing, just, do your best you can to find your own voice in it all. And that's, cheesy and can be stuck on a Hallmark card. But I mean, often the biggest life lessons are exactly like that, I guess.
Well, they're Hallmark cards for a reason, right? So many people connect with it because it's like a stereotype, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's
There,
just all
there-
part of it.
yeah. And the thing is, I love the late 80s and early 90s. I mean, that to me is the era I wish I could have seen. I was born in the mid 90s. So by the time I was born, a lot of this stuff was starting to kind of go away. But I look at that time period with such intrigue and reverence that I desperately wish I could have seen it. And as people keep reminding me, that's not going to happen. So
No.
it was a big reality check for me to realize like the clock isn't turning back. I'm not going to get the band experience that Suffocation had in 1991. It just isn't going to happen. So instead, love what came before, respect the history of metal, because it's very important to see how these genres became what they are. It's very important to understand influence and why the reigning kings of metal are who they are. Uh, but because you're not going to get to actually be a part of all that, do your own thing and be
Yeah.
happy doing your own thing. Because if you're not, well, then, I mean, if you're not, then there's really no point in even playing at all. And that would suck. That would really suck. Not for
That
some
would
people
really suck.
who
Yeah.
probably probably hate what I do. But again,
Yeah, it's all part of it. So, with your like reverence for late 80s, early 90s with the two different like death bands, do you go see them? Death to All and Left to Die when they come through?
I have never been lucky enough to be in the same city when that happened. I have no idea how that's. It's like when Black Sabbath did their final tour. I lived in Boston at the time, and the week they were in Boston, I happened to be back in Chicago. I've never had the luxury of actually being around when they were here. I'd love to go see them. I think I Am Morbid is actually going to be here possibly tonight, possibly tomorrow night. And it's kind of the same thing, a tribute to, I know it's David Vincent, but
Yeah.
um, yeah,
Yeah. That's what did they have? They had Morbid Angel dropped off the Devastation of the Nation tour, and I Am Morbid
yeah,
took their place.
yeah, I think that's what happened. I should be better than I am about keeping up with metal news. That's something I should probably be better about. I don't use the internet all that much, truthfully.
Good for you.
Yeah, I kind of I've been asked in interviews before, like, oh, how do you find new metal bands and this, that, and the other thing? I go to the record store, and when I see something I don't recognize, I buy it. And sometimes it's awesome, sometimes it's just okay, sometimes I not for me. But I do it like that, and I
There's,
really like that. Makes it more personal, I think.
yeah, that's the era that I grew up in. I'm a little bit older than you. I was born mid 70s. So, you know, you- to find new music, like shit, death metal was never played on the radio. You went to the
Oh,
record store and you you sought out the nastiest album cover you could, and you're like, cool, I'm gonna give that a shot. You know, that looks cool as fuck. It's got blood and gore on it. God, those were the days.
and I wish I could have seen them. I have my version of doing that, I guess, but it doesn't, it probably doesn't feel anything like what you had.
I
But
think
that is
if
found immolation. I went in and saw
it,
Kingdom Conspiracy. I was like, oh, taking that. And I was like 14.
yeah, but like if you're doing that, I'm sure the feeling is the same. You know, like if that's how you find music, like that's how you find music. You get the same excitement when the band is awesome and the same disappointment when you're like, oh God, this fucking sucks. I gotta get rid of this one.
There's this record store. Well, it's kind of like a record store, bookshop, horror movie place here in Chicago called Bucket of Blood. And they're awesome. There's such a cool place. And I find a lot of cool bands there. There's Reckless Records here too, which there's three locations, and of the three, the one in Wicker Park, which is 15 minutes away from me, that one's really good, especially for metal. Big metal section. I found tons of bands. I actually, last time I was there, I found Riders of the Plague by The Absence, which is a record I've always wanted to own physically, but I've listened to many times throughout the years. I mean, that record blew my mind when I was 14.
Yeah.
And actually getting a copy of it, putting it in the CD player and listening to it again, it's like, oh my God, this is still just as good. That record's
Holy
freaking
shit.
cool.
That is so wild to think that you were 14 with that album.
Yeah, right. That album, I remember listening to it, especially the song Dead and Gone was always my favorite. I think that's what it's called. It's track two. Um, the solos in that song just blew my friggin' mind.
You
You
know,
know, I
the drummer plays for Overkill now.
oh real I just saw Overkill
Yeah.
actually. Yeah, I just saw them with King Diamond on November 7th, which
Eh,
is my wedding anniversary. So my gift to my wife was, hey, we're gonna go see King Diamond.
Hell yeah. So I went to that tour too with Night Demon opening the show. Like that was such a killer
Ooh,
show from start to finish. Like
big time. Night Demon.
not
I got so into that I went back to the merch line and bought two shirts.
yeah. Actually, so in 2017, Night Demon did a they recorded a live album. It was Live Darkness. Actually, it was 12/2. It was December 2nd of 2017. My daughter loves fucking Night Demons, so we went up to Cleveland to fucking to record, to be there for the recording, dude. She loved every minute of it, and that memory just popped up the other day. I was just like, hell yeah, we're all there in our Night Demon shit. Like,
That's super cool, dude. Yeah, I
good
saw that
shit.
album on their website. I don't have the live one yet. I have all the studio recordings. I don't have the live one yet. I don't
Yeah,
have
live,
the Mercury
live.
live stuff yet either.
Yeah, it's shit. I think I've got all of them, and I've got their little flexi disc from Revolver.
Nice.
Like, because I'm a fucking nerd. Like I just got to buy everything.
Oh yeah, I think people who get really into something, whether they intend to become a collector or not, they always end up there. It's inevitable, and
Yeah,
it's just super fun. I mean, I'm like that with the Evil Dead stuff. If I see Evil Dead merch that I don't have, I'll go broke buying that stuff. Very much the same with CDs. I was like that with guitars for a really long time until I stopped having a place to put all of them and had to sell a few.
yeah, dude, that gets to be expensive, and then you're like, shit. Now I need a warehouse to put.
Oh God, that gets real expensive real fast.
Yeah. So with you like enjoying Mastodon now, I know Mastodon's going to be in your neck of the woods here in a couple of weeks. They're going to be in Hammond.
Oh, my friend Corey lives in Hammond.
So are you going to go to that show?
Well, now, yeah.
I
I
will.
didn't
I'll be
really
there.
know that, but yeah, that's basically 30 minutes away from me.
Okay. Yeah, it's December 28th.
Yeah, and I'll be in town. Okay, yeah, I can definitely look into. I gotta get tickets for that then, and Dream Theater, which I don't. I'm embarrassed to say I don't have yet, but uh, Dream Theater with Portnoy back. So yeah, I got to see this. I haven't
Yeah.
seen Dream Theater with Portnoy since they opened for Iron Maiden, and I was in grade 9. It's been a while.
That that was about the same year as the absence for you.
Yeah, yeah. Basically, I when I got into metal, it was my dad showing me Iron Maiden's Live After Death, specifically the song Flight of Icarus. It's always been his favorite Maiden song. I think it always will be his favorite Maiden song. And I didn't get it at all at first. It took a couple of listens. And then one day I was like, okay, this isn't quite as intense as I originally thought. This is pretty listenable. And from there, it went Iron Maiden to Black Label Society, Black Label Society to Anthrax, Anthrax to the rest of the big four, thrash metal into death metal into black metal, and it just kind of kept going. At some point, fairly early on too, I also got into Halloween through one of their, I say newer as if it isn't 20 years old at this point, but through one of their not classic albums, Gambling with the Devil.
Yeah.
The guitar playing on that album blew me away, so I got into Halloween, and then that led to just being a power metal nerd for a really long time. So metal for me, it started with Maiden and then went outward, and the only place it didn't touch is I was never much of like a deathcore guy.
Okay.
That's and I it's just not for me. I'm not gonna rag on it or say it sucks or anything like that. It doesn't. It's fine. I liked All Shall Perish because Chris Story's guitar playing was super cool. Um, and I liked Born of Osiris with the album they did with Jason Richardson. But other than that, I don't even know if that's called deathcore anymore. But that was kind of the one genre where I wasn't super into it. Um, and now that I'm old and bitter and decrepit, I go back to death metal and glam. I love glam. I listen to a
What
lot of Dokken and Whitesnake.
they are very contrasting styles too. Like
Yes.
one is like real clean and pretty and gussied up, and the other is just punch you in the dick. Let's get this going, you know?
But I think they both have the kind of guitar playing that excites me the most. With the glam stuff, I always loved the glam players because most of them grew up playing blues. And when I got into guitar playing, I actually wanted to be a blues guitar player. Now,
Hmm.
playing guitar came before being into metal for me. So, um, my heroes were like Johnny Lang, who was from Fargo, where I was originally born. I'm a North Dakota boy at heart. And I haven't been back to North Dakota in a while, and I actually really miss it. I'd love to go back just to see some old friends and hang out for a bit. I was really into B.B. King, Robin Ford, David Gilmour, and then I got into some harder rock through AC/DC. Angus Young is basically my hero, and a huge Tony Iommi fan, which is why those two guys I played in SG for years. And then I got so stuck on AC/DC, and my dad got so sick of it. That's why he showed me Iron Maiden. He's like, "Please, for the love of God, listen to something else." But I mean, all those glam guys grew up playing blues.
Yeah.
You hear it in their vibrato, and you can hear it in their improv. So I think that's why I got so into it because they're like, hey, we can shred, we can have cool, good technique and fast alternate picking and this and that, but we still play the blues from time to time. And I liked that a lot. That mattered to me. And then a lot of the new wave of British heavy metal stuff, Maiden, Priest, Saxon, those guys, very bluesy in their approach as well, which again, very, very big fan of that because it seemed relatable. The blues, I don't want to say it's an easy genre to play. It definitely isn't. There's a lot of nuance and there's a lot of things that go into why those players are excellent. But hearing something totally different, like Iron Maiden, not really knowing what's going on or how they're doing that, and then hearing those just little bluesy moments, it made it more relatable to me. And I think that's why I eventually kind of established a foothold and said, oh, well, if they are playing faster versions of the same licks I know, that means sooner or later I'll be able to play that too. And then I firmly believe that was my jumping off point for all of it. And people may not think that Angus Young and Cannibal Corpse have a whole lot in common, and I suppose on paper they don't. But yeah, I mean, you'd be surprised at the kind of similarities you can find in things like that. And I know Pat, who was in Cannibal for the longest time, he was a big Angus Young guy too.
Yeah, he's an exhorter now.
Yeah, yeah. And man, I was actually talking to Manuel today. Pat O'Brien, good Lord, what an amazing guitar player. I mean, everything, just the solos, the phrasing, the riffs, the tone, just the the laid back attitude where he's playing this absolutely crazy stuff like, yeah, whatever, man. It's just, oh God. I wish people talked about how much of an amazing guitar player he was even more, honestly. Because you the other death metal guys get it, but like I think the guitar community at large could actually learn a lot from him.
Oh, for sure.
Oh yeah, I mean he's what I learned from him specifically was how to write an entire song in a symmetrical scale and still give it movement. I mean, the way he was able to craft riffs, and I know he probably wasn't uh, thinking about it as clinically as this, but he would write these amazing riffs and stack them next to each other where they told this. I mean, they flowed perfectly. They told a great story, so to say. And you look at it and you're like, this entire thing is in diminished scale. So that's why it sounds insane because it never really resolves. And then for the solo, he's just going to improvise something that no one else can play and throw a bunch of wah on top of it. I, I mean, the dude's nuts. Nothing but respect for that guy. And I, I really want to be like him, specifically to try and be Pat O'Brien. But I'm not cool enough for that, and B, I can't sit with it properly. So the V is not in the future. But I wish I could pull it off like he could.
Just call him and be like, dude, teach me, oh Jedi Master.
Yeah. It'd be like that scene from Wayne's World where they're going, "We're not worthy. We're not worthy." Just puts the hand up like this, kiss the ring.
It's the, that's funny shit. I mean, but you're, for 30-ish years old, you're pretty fucking accomplished, so far. Like,
Oh, thanks, man. I
so I wouldn't, I wouldn't say you won't get there. Like,
well, so what I did in my mid 20s was I'm fairly recently 30, so I'm not crazy old, but I'm definitely not a spring chicken, as the saying goes. What I did in my mid 20s was I completely changed the way I played guitar. Completely. Um, I wasn't happy with my right hand because I was really fast. I could play sixteenths about 240-ish, like just stupid fast, but I didn't like how much tension there was.
mhm.
And I thought that even though I could play really fast and it was clean, I wanted to be able to do more. I felt limited. So I completely changed everything. I called Matt Mills. Matt Mills, amazing guitar teacher, amazing player. He taught Jason Richardson too. And he teaches Manuel, the other guitar player in my band. I called him and he taught me a new way of practicing. And so I went from being able to play, again, about 240 BPM to about 60 overnight. And that was an incredibly humbling experience.
I bet.
And it really made me reevaluate both how I thought about music and also the kind of guitar playing I really appreciated. Because I used to play basically anything I wanted to now nothing, not even my own songs. And as I got better and better, not to say that I'm, at a godlike level or even at the level that I want to be, but as I was able to do more things, I developed an appreciation for guitar in the sense that being able to play anything in tune and in time is just kind of a miracle. It really is. Because even the basic stuff can be a nightmare. The learning curve on guitar is incredibly steep. My own students, that's how I pay my rent is teaching. The first thing I tell them on day one is the first year sucks. It just does.
Yeah.
It's not easy. I'm not trying to scare anybody or discourage anyone because it's the most, in my opinion, the most rewarding thing you could possibly do. But it's endless frustration at first. But when you start to see that progress, and there's nothing that feels better. So the level I'm at now, it is something that I clawed my way back to practicing 8 hours a day throughout my 20s. And I'm happy to say I'm almost to where I want to be. Almost. I do all my practicing on the acoustic, just again, so there's no safety net whatsoever. Uh, and I know what I'm playing is clean and in time. And I also will write songs on the acoustic because I think that if you have a riff and it sounds good in a completely not metal context, it'll sound good when you layer guitars and have distortion and do all this other stuff. When you got the double bass pedal or the loud thumpy bass, it'll sound even better then. If it sounds good on the acoustic, it'll sound great in the studio. If
Oh
your
yeah.
riff only sounds good because you're playing through it on an amp with the mid turned to zero and the reverb all the way up, well, I mean, that's hiding a lot. Not that that isn't a style. It's certainly a vibe, but I mean, for me personally, I like to do things with as much my feet on the floor as possible, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. I think there's a lot of guitar players out there that they're good guitar players, but if they played in a clean environment, they wouldn't, it wouldn't sound, honestly, it wouldn't sound clean at all. It would be, sloppy.
Um, Al Di Meola is the most insane guitar player to me nowadays, really, because he's in his what 60s, like late 60s at this point,
Yeah.
and he's playing just as well as he could when he was 24. It's just like, good Lord. But I mean, he talks about playing acoustic all the time. In fact, I actually think his acoustic playing is cooler than his electric playing because he's doing all this stuff that's incredibly fast, incredibly clean, and he's been doing it since the 70s on an ovation. It's just like, and that's, I got the idea from practicing on the acoustic from Matt Mills, but he got it from Al Di Meola. And, now I listen to that guy and it's like, my God, what
Yeah,
a dude.
I think Alex Skolnick is another one, like he's a really good guitar player. And when he plays on the acoustic, like honestly, that's one I could just sit and watch because he's just a fucking phenomenal guitar player.
Dude, he is my favorite thrash metal guitar player, period. I mean, I love Marty Friedman, love Chris Poland, Jeff Young, all the dudes that were in Megadeth. Big fan of Dan Spitz from Anthrax.
Hold on.
Uh, the,
You can't say all the dudes that were in Megadeth. That's like everyone in heavy metal
okay,
ever.
yeah, true. Okay, big fan specifically Chris Broderick, Chris Poland, Jeff Young, and Marty Friedman.
Yeah.
Sorry to the other the other list of 900 guitar players, but Alex, man, like it was the tone, it was the phrasing, and it was just the playfulness he had.
Yeah.
I mean, like you could tell he was just having the time of his life when he played, which was always so great. And man, Testament, those early records and the records that they put out after Alex came back, I mean, those are just untouchably good. They really
Yeah.
are. And I like the ones with James Murphy too. I mean, those are still cool. They're different. They're not quite as overly thrashy, but I mean, it's the 90s.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's still good records. But Skolnick, though, just good lord. And I got to meet him once at NAMM. I very much doubt he would remember it, but it was at the Seymour Duncan booth, and he and Aaron Marshall from Intervals were playing together. And Aaron's playing is super modern. A lot of people really love it, and props to him, man. That's awesome. It's not quite my style. I like
Yeah.
more of the old school thing. And then Alex came in and he was doing these kind of jazzy lines mixed with a lot of blues playing. And then he could just kick it right into high gear and go into this crazy fast stuff. After their jam, which was oddly enough, I stood right behind Steven Taranto watching that, which was hilarious. Um, I went up and I got a picture with Alex and I told him how much I loved First Strike is Deadly. I mean, that song, if you're about to walk out and stand there at bat and you get your walk up song, that would be my song. First Strike is Deadly because it's just friggin' nuts how heavy it is and fast and guitar solo is amazing. I mean, I nothing but good things to say about those Old Testament records.
Hell yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a reason that Testament is as as respected as they are today. I mean, such a good, solid fucking band, and they have been for shit almost 40 years at this point.
Yeah, and there's no bad records, none.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, there's not one spot where you can go, oh, well, this one's whatever. No, it's like they're all at there. It's like a baseline of at least good.
Yeah.
Most bands, like, there's at least one album where it's like, okay, yeah, this one, it kind of sucks, but whatever, we put up with it. But no, Testament, it is baseline at least 6 out of 10, usually more like 9, 9.5, or 10 out of
Right.
10.
Yeah. This just a really good, solid fucking band for sure.
Definitely.
Okay. Michael, dude, I appreciate you coming and hanging out with me tonight.
Hey, man, it was a great time. Thank you so much for having me.
Hell yeah, we had a great conversation. I really enjoyed learning a lot about you. I'm really excited for what the band has in store for it in the future. Honestly, oh, the one thing I didn't ask that we have to cover, what kind of physical copies do you all have of the Mother of Death?
Unfortunately, there are none yet. However, and because we're basically all the way to 2025, I can just say this now. Um, in February, we're dropping our next release. It's a split with the band Blood Feast Ritual, which is the band I used to play in. There were some unreleased tracks that are finally getting to see the light of day. And after that, we have a special thing that we're dropping. And with that is coming the physical copies. Mother of Death, the special surprise that I'm not allowed to talk about yet, and the other EPs finally coming to physical. We're also going to have some shirts too. Uh, there are shirts now, technically. There was an error in printing. So I've got a box of 200 shirts that I can't sell. Oh man, that was a crushing day when that happened.
Oh
So
yeah.
anyone who has, there have been people who've reached out and asked about merch before. So to anyone, the merch is coming. It was supposed to be here. There was an error. I'm out several $100s, but it's coming soon, within a few months.
You
Thank
should
you for
totally you should totally sell the fuck ups.
Once we get some proper merch, that's actually the plan. I'm going to put it up like, hey guys, whoops, this is an accident. Here you go. And if people are into that, that's great. If not, I understand. But once we get some proper merch up there, then absolutely. We do have posters and patches as of right now on our Bandcamp. But yes, actual, real, non-destroyed merch coming in a few short months.
Non-destroyed. I'm gonna hit you up on Instagram. I want a photo of that fucked up shirt.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're hilarious.
Hell yeah. Okay, well, for you guys out there, make sure you go check out their Bandcamp. Necronomicon Ex Mortis, fucking fantastic. Buy digital, physical when they have it, whatever. Make sure to check out the Mother of Death. Michael, thank you. I greatly appreciate your time. Go and have yourself a great night, man.
Hey man, thank you for everything. It was a blast. I'll talk to you soon.
Hell yeah. See ya.